This topic is classifying sums and products as rational or irrational. So when we are adding an irrational number to a rational number, the result will be irrational. So the square root of 15 cannot simplify down. 15 is not a perfect square. And the reason is because the sum of a rational and irrational is always irrational. Then the second one, because it's a whole number and a fraction, those are both rational numbers. So the sum will be rational because the sum of two rationals is always rational. Square root of 21 is irrational. And when we multiply a rational and irrational together, it will be irrational. So we have a non-zero rational and an irrational number will give the result of the product will be irrational. We have two fractions here. They're both rational. When we multiply them, we're going to get another fraction or a whole number, and it will be rational. So the product of two rationals is always rational. These reasons that are listed here are all of the reasons, so it can help you see which is the right answer. So for instance, if you're going to add two rationals together, your answer will always be rational. If you add one rational and one irrational, then your answer will be irrational. If you add or multiply two irrationals, it's sometimes rational and sometimes irrational. The product of two rationals is always rational, and the product of a non-zero rational and an irrational is always irrational. So it's kind of, they're giving you the answers here of what it's going to be. Let's see, we have to product. If you want to check those as you go, you can. Okay, so here's another one. Square root of 13 is irrational. Okay, so you can look here and say the sum of a rational and an irrational, and it tells you it's always irrational, so we're going to pick that one. Decimals are rational and negatives are rational, so we have the sum of two rationals is always rational. Now we're multiplying, so the product of a non-zero rational and an irrational is always irrational. So we'll make sure and do that one. Now the square root of 17 times 3, because those are both prime, it's not going to give me a perfect square. So it's going to stay irrational, and we'll pick the last one. Sometimes it's rational and sometimes it's not. And let's just do one more for kicks and giggles. We are adding, so the sum of a rational and an irrational is always irrational. These are two rational numbers added. They're both fractions, and fractions are rational. This is an irrational and a non-zero rational, so it's going to be irrational. And then we're multiplying two rationals. So the answer is always rational. That's the end of the lesson.